with today's residency info session, just about everything you need to know. And with us, before we get started, just a quick disclosure, this is just for educational purposes to help guide you along your way with residencies. It's not eligible for CE, and we appreciate not reproducing this without permission. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We will start out with introductions, so you know who's going to be joining us today. Just run through some of the basics of applying for residencies and the timeline and expectations, a few tips on how to make yourself stand out as an applicant, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. And so with that, a few introductions. I'm Joanne Yanez. I'm the Executive Director for AANMC, and we are the organization that administers the residency application and match. With us today, in no particular order except for alphabetical, we've got Taylor Boehm, Dr. Boehm from NUNM, Dr. Carino from CCNM, Dr. Garcia at Bastyr, Dr. Saunders at NUNM as well, and Dr. Vasquez at Sonoran. And so with that, we are going to turn it over to Dr. Carino.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We're happy to answer any questions, but hopefully this summary will provide you with the basics of knowing what to do next with regards to residencies and give you a nice background. So let's step back a little bit and ask the question, who coordinates the residencies? Well, first of all, we want to ensure that standards have been met. And those standards have been identified through the Council on Naturopathic Medical Education. And this organization not only recognizes accredited naturopathic medical colleges, but they also oversee naturopathic medical colleges who oversee residency sites. So we have the CNME. We also have the AANMC, which convenes the AANMC Residency Committee, and the Residency Committee consists of residency directors from each of the accredited member programs, and we're pretty much around the table right here today. And we are committed to the continual improvement of postgraduate medical education through the expansion of residency opportunities, as well as ensuring the overall quality of postgrad medical education. Next slide, please. So what's the value proposition for residency? And we've known it for a long time. Some of us here have actually gone through a residency program and can speak to it. But a survey was conducted in 2023, and we actually asked all of the residents that were willing to participate what were the benefits that we're seeing. And you can see the highlights here. Definitely seeing more pathology than perhaps some of your colleagues that would have graduated at the same time. There's a minimum of 500 patient encounters during the course of their residency, and you would see a range of acute to chronic conditions, as well as whatever the specialization that residency may have. There's also specialized training, so you may decide that you want to focus on a certain area, and some residencies actually offer some of that specialized training. And then, of course, mentorship, learning, and that type of environment is something that we want to encourage within all of our professional activities. And by gaining exposure to different practitioners and practice styles will definitely expand your own learning and your own ability to work with patients. Next slide, please. So then what do residents do? What you'll see here is that it's not just one thing, it's actually several things. You'll see that you will be undergoing a professional program of self-study and guidance, but then of course you'll be practicing safe, effective, and compassionate patient care. You will also have mentorship around that and support. There's also educational and scholarly activities that you will be responsible for participating in, as it does play a role within the standards of residencies. And these include grand rounds, continuing ed experiences, public and professional lecturing, as well as research and scholarly activity. Next slide, please. And then it keeps going. Not only is there scholarly activity, but you're also working approximately 40 to 60 hours a week. And you learn the art of doctoring. Also, depending on the residency, for instance, if you're in an academic residency, you may be participating in committees, you'll be involved in patient care review, you'll be involved in academic course instruction, as well as supervision of student clinical education. So then not only do we know what residents generally do, depending on the residency, now what are the other benefits that come? Well, the CPNME, so that is the Council for Postgraduate Naturopathic Medical Education, which is as a committee of the CNME, they set a minimum standard for salary for the first year residents. So this will also include malpractice benefits as well as other benefits. So when you have an opportunity, fully understand the contract expectation and benefits. And just so you know, there is a requirement of at least 10 days of paid time off per program year.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carino. So with that, we are going to have Dr. Boehm run through how to be a competitive applicant.
Thank you. So making yourself a competitive applicant will vary between what sites you're interested in. The teaching residencies versus the private residencies may have different things they're looking for in your CV, and you'll want to make sure that you read about the residencies that you're interested in so you can highlight those parts in your CV or resume. So start building your CV as early as possible. The earlier you do it, the better, because then you can see where there may be some holes that you need to fill in. Maybe you start building it now and you see, oh, I don't have a rotation that I've done in a cardiology, and the practice that I'm interested in applying to, they focus on cardiology. So maybe I need a little bit more help there. The earlier you do it, the better. Then you'll just have more time. Be very organized when you're going through this process. You'll want to highlight any leadership skills that you've had throughout your years, not only throughout medical school, but prior as well. Any activities or events that you've been involved in. And make sure that you show the attendance in different types of rotations that you've done, even if they may not be something that you could use at the residency you're applying for. It's still important to show your well-rounded education. Grades are really important to show that you took your education seriously. And make sure that you have some teaching or research background. Especially for the teaching residencies, you'll want to highlight that you have the skills to be able to teach future students as well. Any relevant experiences that you can think about, whether they were during medical school or prior. And again, I know I said this at the beginning, but get things done well before they were supposed to happen and stay really organized. Dr. Saunders, did you want to add anything to this slide?
The only thing I'll add is that there is a sample template for the CV on the portal, which we'll talk about here shortly, that will ask you to put all of this in a certain format. So when Dr. Boehm says start early, make sure you download the templates and put it into that format. So thank you, Dr. Boehm.
Thank you.
I'll keep going from here. So is residency required? The answer there is, mixed. It is in one state so far, and there are a few other states that are drafting legislature that might be looking at making that requirement in those geographical areas. But in general, residency is highly recommended. It's that continued opportunity. We call it kind of the graduate medical education. It's that year from a year to 3 years, depending, where you're getting a more opportunity to work with other experienced doctors and get that feedback from your attendings or site supervisors before you're actually out on your own. It is also helpful for some jobs, depending on your career goal of where you would like to work. If you're looking at a very integrative center with MDs, DOs, and other providers, showing that you've done graduate medical education and can speak that language alongside those other healthcare professionals is a really big piece for your CV. Some insurance panels, if that's something that you're going to be taking in your practice, being able to be a PCP provider versus, which is a primary care provider versus a specialist, Sometimes depends on whether or not you had any graduate medical education. So that post-graduation opportunity, meaning a residency. So it's recommended for numerous reasons, all the way up from aligning to your career goals to just really kind of rounding out your education and getting that opportunity for 1 to 3 years of a lot more pathology than you saw as a student on your clinic shifts. Next slide, please.
And Dr. Saunders, I would like to also add just one thing before we move on to the next slide. Sure. I recognize sometimes students are concerned about the salary implications of completing a residency. And one of the things to take into consideration is that while you are a resident, you're building your network, you're building your confidence and your skills. And if you were to be building a practice on your own, that is not always sometimes a guaranteed salary right out of the door from graduation. And so it might take some time to start ramping up that salary as you build your practice. And so I know some students are sometimes concerned about the salaries with the accredited residencies, but I did want to just bring that up. Thanks, Dr. Saunders. Sorry to butt in there.
No worries. Thanks for bringing that in. I'll actually just tag on to that having completed a residency makes your negotiation skills, gives you more leverage in negotiating your salary for your first few jobs out of residency versus those who did not complete them. So that's another benefit there. So thanks for bringing up the salary. So how do you apply? So this is going to give you this slide's really a scaffolding. When we talk about residency, we say there's phase 1 and there's phase 2. And there'll be a lot of dates on a slide later on in the presentation. What you need to know is phase 1 is pretty much right now, starting tomorrow, right up into the point where the application portal opens and the jobs are posted. Okay, so that is January 30th. That date will come later on. So between now and January 30th, we call it phase 1. And I'll be talking a little bit more in detail about what you should and could be doing. And then phase 2 is right when the portal opens, the jobs are going to be posted that you can actually apply to, and that's when you actually submit your applications. So that's the nomenclature there, the kind of scaffolding around what to do. So since we're starting phase 1, and we'll have another info session like this later on that describes more things in phase 2. So next slide, please. So here's all of the things that you should and could and should, whatever order you prefer there, but I would say should be working on between now and the end of January, getting ready for the jobs to actually post. So you can first and foremost create a profile on the residency portal, and Stephanie is going to be dropping in the link into the chat here. Recommend getting that account set up, verify your email, so that you're able to hop in right there on the homepage. You'll want to click into, all of the dates that we talk about today are also listed right there on the homepage of this residency portal. You'll want to download the Simplicity app, which I'll talk more about on the next slide. You'll want to look at the application checklist in the portal. And I believe Dr. Garcia will be talking a little bit more about the checklist and the workflow of going through the website. You can explore currently approved residency sites by looking at not necessarily job postings, but what's called residency sites. And that just shows you a repository of sites that have been approved and have hosted in the past. During phase 1, you will have no indication of who will be hosting for residency in this next cycle, because they're still meeting their first year residents, and sometimes they end up keeping them for 2 years. Sometimes they layer and stack. So we ask for their commitment in January of whether or not they'll participate. But you can see the list of all the sites that are approved now. You can prepare your documents and start to request your evaluations. If you know that residency is something that you want to do, you can start requesting your evaluations now from your evaluators. You can also start preparing all of your documents. So in the resource library of the portal, you'll see more information about the documents that you need to prepare. And I believe Dr. Garcia will talk about that a little bit as well. But like Dr. Bohem said, you could be working on your CV. Then you could be working on your essays and a whole host of other pieces so that you're not hit all at once. By the time you get to February, when phase 2 starts, you should really be mostly concerned about looking at the job postings that are there and which ones meet your goals for your first year out. And if you have all of the other things tucked away and buttoned up, your CVs and your essays got a nice draft on those, then phase 2 will go very, very easy for you. I will say that you can do everything in phase 1 here. You can do it in phase 2. But phase 2 is a very short period of time. And usually that creates a lot of added stress for students, especially when you're also trying to finish and focus on some schoolwork. So do yourself a favor and prepare as many of the documents ahead of time as possible. You can also complete preceptorships, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But by exploring the residency sites that have been approved in the portal, you could potentially reach out to them and see if they would allow you to visit as a preceptor or an observer student. We call it different things in different schools, to be able to start making relationships and also see what that clinic's all about. See if that's something that you would like to spend the next year at. And then finally, you can register your credit card. This step is not charging your card at all. It's just putting your card into the system so that when you do apply, your application fees can be charged. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, we'll sign up on the portal and get an account. That address is here on this slide and also likely in the chat. You'll need to verify your email as soon as that happens. One of the biggest pieces here is please check your spam folder. I recommend using an email address that is something that you use often. So don't use your backup one that you use to sign up for things that other news and shopping and things like that, but really try to select one of your email addresses that you know that you'll be in often so you can see the alerts come through. And then if you don't see this initial email verification come through relatively soon thereafter creating your account, to make sure you check your spam folder. You'll then get login and instructions. You'll get a welcome to the system that will contain some more information for you. And you want to download all of those and review those attachments. Those attachments are also in that document library. So once you start taking a drive through on the actual website itself. Next slide, please. All right, my final slide. Step 2, if everyone has their phone hanging out, now's a good time to get it. Very, very few times when someone is teaching or presenting will they want you to have your phone in their hand, but this is a good time for that. Go ahead and go to your app store and type in Simplicity. Note that there is a Y in the spelling. And if you just type in Simplicity Jobs, because there's different types of Simplicity programs out there, but Simplicity Jobs should bring up something called Simplicity Jobs and Careers. And it'll match that little icon, which I think is the hot air balloon. And that would be the icon that you're looking for. Why is this important? This app is important, and make sure you turn on notifications to your phone when you actually download it and put in your same email and password that you just created for the portal, right? Same one. But the reason why this one's an important step is it sends you push notifications. These are really critical for the deadlines. There's going to be a slide coming up later on that has a lot of deadlines that you have to meet. Deadlines for getting your faculty evaluator, deadlines for submitting a credentials order. Don't worry, we'll talk about that. Deadlines for submitting your applications. All of these pieces are things that you can't miss. So certainly write them all on your calendar. But if you have the app, you'll get push notifications when there are alerts that deadlines are coming. And that's really one of the number one things that we hear a lot, being all these residency directors that are on this panel, is students that miss deadlines and email us. And we really have to stick through the deadlines, because each part of this is a critical kink in a cog in the whole process of moving on. So we don't set the deadlines necessarily to make your lives difficult, but we can't open them back up, because once things have happened, the next phase is underway, and then the next deadline, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very difficult for us to be able to allow any type of permissions to miss deadlines and get new deadlines as an individual student. So please make sure that you sign up for this app so that you will get push notifications and not miss any deadlines. And that's all. I will hand it over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. So now that you have an account in the AANMC portal, the key thing that you need to look at, as indicated by that arrow right in the upper right-hand corner, is the resource link. So if you click on that, it'll open to this portion of that. You'll have the application checklist and the document library. Now, the application checklist is just a way for you to make sure that you're following the steps appropriately and that you're meeting those requirements based on the application timelines. The documents library, of course, has a slew of good information that you'll need to be able to complete an application for any of the individual sites that you're interested in. Next slide, please. So here's step 4. As you can see in the first bullet point, key in, of course, is make sure that you create this account. You make sure that you're logged in. You make sure that you got verified. And the next bullet point is really important here because the timelines is key. As Dr. Saunders had mentioned earlier, you know, these timelines are really important because these are all vital steps. It's one of those things that you say that if you miss any one of these steps, that you're really far behind and you won't be able to submit your applications in an appropriate manner. And of course, the key thing, as I mentioned earlier, in the resource link, you'll have your documents library, and in that documents library are several, informations and documents that you can download. Make sure if you're a person like me, I'm pretty old school. I still download and print it on paper, but I also have a backup on my laptop. So it's good to just have multiple redundancies just in case your laptop might go down. You still have something to look at so that you don't miss any of these key deadlines. And as you can see there, that the deadlines are in the Eastern time zones. That's really important because for students who are here on the West Coast, particularly in Oregon, Washington, and California, you know, you may miss those deadlines. Also, in the students in Sonoran. So make sure that you're clear on those deadlines and those timelines. And Dr. Saunders had mentioned that you know, not all CNME approved residencies are what we call posting for residencies in the coming cycle, but that doesn't mean that they're not approved. They're just that they have currently maybe residents that are in their first year or doing their second year, and the only time that they'll really notify us if they're really participating or hiring residents in the coming cycle is sometime in January. That being said, you'll be able to look at any approved residency sites by going to the employer tab or link, which is again highlighted there in your upper right hand corner of your web page. And of course, when you're really now looking for actual residency positions, which will likely be, you know, in the first week of January. The actual posting period begins I believe on the end of January, but February is the bulk of really the main postings. You'll have to go and scoot over to the other link that's labeled jobs, and this is where you're going to be able to find the actual posting, and you'll be able to even download the job description or the site description that will give you very specific information that includes resident responsibilities, the goals of the program. It'll give you at least some baseline information on just understanding what this particular clinic is all about, and then it'll be really up to you if you're interested in looking into this. And of course, as what Dr. Sanders had mentioned earlier, always good to just connect with the site, see if you might be able to establish some kind of relationship by shadowing or precepting. Always good to just get the heads up there before you actually be in the process of applying in February. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, if you go to the to your resource tab and the documents library. This is where you'll be able to download instructions on how to put together your CV. All of these have page limits. That's the key thing to remember when you're putting these documents together. There are page limits. You don't have you may have a 20-page CV, in which case you're gonna have to trim it down. I believe the limit is up to 5 pages. So just read the instructions and make sure you're following the margins. You're making sure that you're following the font size. You're making sure that you follow the instructions on the page limit. I know there are some selection committees that are very particular about this and will ding students because they didn't follow the required margins, the required number, especially when they're putting together their personal statement, when they're submitting their essays. There are page limits to this, so make sure that you're really paying attention to this. And as you're putting together your personal statement and your essays, always make sure that you're addressing it to a particular site. Just makes it more professional. So please remember to do that. And if you have your NPLEX 1 results, you can scan them and then you can upload them already into the My Documents portion of your account. Now, the key thing to remember here is that the NPLEX 1 results, it doesn't have to be the official transcript. Whatever communication received from the board is good enough. Just make sure you take a picture of it, scan it as a PDF, and you'll be able to upload it into your My Documents. If you don't have these results, or say you moved from one apartment to another and you may have lost the actual document, please request it now because it'll take some time. The board is not very receptive in emergency issuance of the NPLEX 1 transcript. So I'd encourage you, if you lost it, you don't know where it is, please put a request now to the board so that you can get your NPLEX 1 scores. And as you're saving your files, as you can see here, there are instructions here. Make sure that when you save the files and into specific names, make sure that you follow these instructions as well. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the things that you can do in addition to making sure that you have your NPLEX 1 scores, and if you don't have it, requesting it from the board, is that you want to make sure that you're already identifying your faculty evaluators. You'll need 3, at a minimum of 3. And when you submit this for later on, I'll mention something about how to put together an order, but you need at least a minimum of 3 faculty evaluators. And these faculty evaluators are folks or faculty members who you know will give you the best possible recommendation. I've had students in the past ask me, does it always have to be our full-time faculty or what we call here at BAS your core faculty? No, it could be your adjunct faculty, your part-time faculty. It could even be a preceptor that you've worked with maybe for several months or even a year. The key is, remember, this is an evaluation of your performance as a clinician. And this person will be able to give you the best possible evaluation. So you need 3 evaluators, and at the same time, you're also going to have to request your school for a transcript. Now, how to do this? As you can see in your account, there's this small little button that has your initials, and if you click on that where the R is up top, it'll give you a drop-down menu. Then you go to recommendations, and then when you click on recommendations, it'll give you now an opportunity to request your 3 evaluations and transcript. It's pretty self-explanatory, and the different schools will have the different contact information of the registrars, of the school registrars. So please make sure that you look at that. And then one of the things that you must remember, and as you can see, there's a starred bullet point here. It says the faculty must complete the evaluations by February 26th, and this is a hard deadline. And this also not only means the faculty, but your school transcript themselves, because it's really important to have your 3 faculty evaluations as your school transcript. So if you submitted a request to faculty through the portal, and your faculty has not responded, please approach them, let them know that that it might be in their spam folder. So if there's not, then just notify us, and we'll try to see where this where the situation is. And and as you can see here, it says here, proceed to this step early if you're anticipating for applying for residency. And I would probably say not just anticipate for applying. If you're just even simply considering, you may look at the sites, and none of those sites right now may be reaching out to you. But sometime down the road, you say, maybe I might consider residency. Just get this all put together so that you have it all, so that if there's a site that gets posted during the application period and it resonates with you, you got everything all good to go. Next slide, please.
And Gary, I just wanted to add on regarding the faculty evaluations that those are confidential. So the students or applicants are not seeing the faculty applications or evaluations, rather, they are coming in directly to the system. You're not gathering them yourselves. You're getting a link to your faculty evaluators, and then they are filling that out and getting that into the system directly.
Right.
I'd love to tag in one more thing. Sorry, Dr. Garcia. If you want to know what questions are going to be asked in the evaluation, there's a copy of that in the document library. And so I advise you to go and look at what questions your evaluators are going to need to comment on, what competencies and skills, because you'll notice that, like Dr. Garcia says, there's a lot of clinical skills that are being asked about: your use and knowledge of homeopathy, your use and knowledge of herbs and supplements, your all of these pieces. And so when you select your evaluator, Gary gave you a long list of whom could do it for you, but make sure it's someone who's actually observed you wielding these modalities and doctoring, versus sometimes preceptorships are just where you're observing the doctor and you guys have a great relationship and had some good conversations, but they've really not seen you doctoring. And so look at the actual evaluation in the document library and make sure you choose somebody that can rank you on all of those different competencies. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. And yeah, just to tag on to that, the key thing to remember here is that while you're able to see these forms, and it's good to see what actual skill sets that you're going to get evaluated on, remember, these are not the forms itself that you're going to be emailing to your faculty supervisors. They are going to complete your request online direct through the AANMC. So that form that you're able to download in the documents library is only a way for you to get a chance of saying, okay, how am I actually going to get evaluated? So just be aware of that. Next slide, please. Let's see. Yes, while waiting now for your evaluations to come in, the other thing that you can do, as you can see, these are all steps that don't have to come in sequence to each other. You can multitask and do these things all within the pre-application period itself. So if you go again and click on that little circle with your initials, there'll be a drop-down menu that says My Documents. And if you click on that My Documents, you'll be able now to upload your CV, your personal statement, your essays, and your NCLEX 1 scores. I'd highly recommend that that you play around with this, even though you might not be uploading anything. You're not when you're uploading these documents, you're not really applying. It's simply a storage of your documents. Okay, that's why there's a bullet point there that's up start that says, a note that this is not the application process. When you put together and put your CV, your personal statements, your essay, and NCLEX, you can upload, download, revise, change, delete as often as you want. The key thing to remember here is that this is a repository of your application documents. And if you uploaded a CV this month and you looked at it and say, geez, I actually did a few more things before the application period in February, and in that quarter you may have been active in the NMSA, or you might have been assisting the school in some key activities, maybe in an accreditation committee or research capacity that you hadn't put down. Then you want to revise, you can take down the old CV and upload it with an updated one. and so on and so forth. So just remember that when you are putting information in the My Documents portion, this is just a repository. And yeah, as the second reminder of obviously here also says that you want to make sure that you check the documents library and download all the key information that you need. Next slide. And then so now that you have your 3 faculty evaluations and your transcript, the next key step here is to submit your order. So what is this order? This order is a request to the residency committee to put your 3 faculty evaluations and your school's transcript into a confidential file that will be part of your application to any clinical site. And again, to do that, you have to go to the icon, circle with your initials, go to recommendations, and then there'll be a portion there, one of the links right across the top there, that'll say orders. Click on that, add new, and then upload your 3 faculty evaluations. Now, for those of you who may have requested faculty or 3 or more, you're going to have to make a decision. You can't submit all 4 or 5. I've even had some students submit 6. The committee is not going to process that. We're going to communicate to you and say, of these X number of faculty recommendations that you put in your order, which of the 3 are you actually going to be using for the application? So please keep that in mind, and that's why it's really important to have an email that you're going to be checking regularly, because the committee will notify you through that email. And let's see. Now, once the committee has completed the processing the application, your order for your application to the sites, it'll be put by the committee, labeled something to the effect that will say confidential credential order of student ABC, and you'll find it in your My Documents. So once you have all those documents, which is your CV, your personal statement, your essays, your NCLEX-1 score, and your confidential file, then you're good to go. You can apply to as many clinical residencies that you'd like to apply to. And of course, always make sure that you, as what Dr. Sander mentioned earlier, you register your credit card, because once the deadline is complete, then the committee will charge your credit card for the number of residencies that you have actually applied to. Next slide, please.
Okay, so with this slide, we're going to be moving over to Dr. Vasquez.
Perfect, thank you. So I want to reiterate one point that has been talked about multiple times up to now, which is the completion of a preceptorship, shadowing, or an elective offsite experience. As Dr. Saunders had mentioned, there are different names and are different programs, but essentially the key point here is familiarity with a site with whom you are considering a career or employment. And this is a common practice in just professional careers moving forward, regardless of the profession. And that is, if you're looking to be employed by an organization or with an individual, it behooves you to have some familiarity on both ends to see how operations work. What are the expectations? Is this an environment where you think you will be comfortable and fruitful? And it works the other way around as well, in the potential employer seeing candidates and whether or not that's going to be a good fit. So with that said, as a student, we really encourage you to take the opportunity to reach out to sites with whom you're considering or interested in, especially when it comes to terms of residencies. That will allow you an opportunity to establish a line of communication, familiarity, again, as I had mentioned, and then opportunities to actually go to the site so you can shadow, participate, whether it's part of your program of study or if it's independently as a shadowing individual. Again, it helps for you to understand what are the the expectations of residents who may be employed there at the time, and or any new changes of how residents are expected to be working within that specific operations. So as we are getting towards our winter break, this is actually a great opportunity for you all to reach out to potential sites and consider setting up times for you to go over and see how they operate, participate, communicate with the on-site site director, the physicians with whom you would be working with, and again, what the expectations are. Historically, employers, especially at our private sites, affiliated sites as we call them, really enjoy meeting potential candidates before the actual match period. Doesn't necessarily increase the likelihood, but it does increase the familiarity, a sense of comfort between potential employer and potential employee after the match has actually occurred. Some sites will require some form of shadowing or preceptorship and actually will not accept an applicant if this doesn't happen. Mind you, with the match process, it's a ranking system. So depending on the number of applicants a specific site has, the site will rank them in regard to preference, respected to the number of positions that they have available. Sites do have the option to actually not rank a student or applicant as well. So do bear that in mind. Again, you want to make yourself visible as an applicant. You want to make sure you stand out. As we had mentioned previously in this presentation, what can you do to really highlight your attributes, your positive attributes as an applicant? This really pulls everything together in regard to your ability to meet the residency site directors, so that they know you as a person and not just as an applicant on paper. It really supports your chances for matching at a given site. We want to make sure that you are in compliance with state and governing laws as well. So again, you want to make sure when you are shadowing with a specific site, that it's clear whether it's part of your program of study and you're following programmatic requirements. If it's individualized, that the site with whom you are shadowing are following all malpractice rules and so forth. If you are a graduate and there is a period of time where you are shadowing, please make sure that you're checking into legislative parameters and statutes that may require a formal preceptorship agreement during that time. But all in all, at the end, even aside from these legalities and logistics, it really benefits you to have familiarity with the site and to go ahead and shadow them as early as possible. Next slide, please. Going back to the logistics of getting yourself prepared, step 7, or as Dr. Garcia had mentioned, these things can happen in any particular order. You do want to make sure you have your credit card registered. It is a little bit frustrating, if not cumbersome, for you to have done all this work for your credit cards to not be registered and your applications not to be processed. So be sure that you are completing this step and you're using a credit card that won't be expired in March of next year. So you want to make sure the expiration date is up to date as well, because that's when a lot of these charges will be processed. So again, going back to that same dashboard and portal, you're going to be clicking the above header credit card registration. And you're going to select the credit card registration for the 2025-2026 student fair year. By doing it early, again, that is one less thing that you have to worry about. The cards will be automatically processed dependent on the number of applications that you submit, which means the number of sites, and the fees is typically processed within 72 hours. The card will not be processed if you do not submit anything. So do bear that in mind as well. But you want to make sure that you have that form of payment on record within the system, again, so you don't have to worry about it and it doesn't delay your application process. Next slide, please. So to review again the timeline, and mind you, this is for our on-cycle typical timeline where residency sites will be beginning with their residents in the fall of that year. As a quick aside, there are some sites, including institutional academic sites, that do have spring starts. That is an off-cycle process that doesn't necessarily follow this timeline. It's actually abbreviated with a real quick turnover. But again, this timeline is specific to our typical match process, with the positions being filled for the fall of that year. So right now we are in phase one. As you can see, October 27th, last time I checked, that was today, is Naturopathic Residency Week. And this is really where we're committing to that process. And you are all being very proactive in getting all these things done that we have discussed so far. So the residency portal opens today. You want to start requesting and preparing your documents. And preparation is key. Again, that allows you enough time to fine tune everything, including your CV, follow the recommended and presented template format that the AANMC has, to make sure that it's standardized and meeting the needs and expectations of all the institutional and affiliate sites that are using this same match process. In phase two, which was mentioned to be a quick turnaround, is really when the application period opens. So you have your credential orders ready to go, and you're choosing the sites essentially that you want to apply to. The faculty evaluations are coming in, the transcripts are coming in. Again, your credential orders are being formulated, and you're submitting those applications to the sites to whom you would like to apply by March 12th. So really by March 12th, we hope that you have already met with the respective site directors at both the institutional and affiliated sites with whom you are interested, shadowed, preceptored, observed. Again, familiarity is key to your success. And then finally, we have the interview and match period. So beginning in March 31st is the start of that interview period. And the interview processes are going to be dictated by the specific site directors, including residency site directors for the institutional and academic programmatic residencies within each of our schools. And so those interview processes will vary, but you will have follow-up information from those respective directors. The end of the interview period is in the mid part of May, after which you will have 1 week to submit your rank list, and the sites are doing the same, where we then have the match process, and the match reveal date is May 30th, where you will know if you have matched and with whom you have matched. After which there is an off-cycle period for those that did not match. But essentially, this is the main timeline for this upcoming 2025 academic calendar year.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasquez. And I do want to just emphasize that the interview period in March through the end of May, or through the middle of May rather, if you are planning on taking any interviews or possibly considering residencies outside of your state or province where you reside, that is something important to plan for, to make sure that you are, setting aside some funds necessary to be able to do that, if that is in your plan moving forward. So with that, where can we learn more? So here are the links. Bookmark these. Very important to check out the, as we've been talking about all day, the residency portal. And as part of Naturopathic Residency Week, we have videos from many of the sites, and sometimes they will have their current or immediate past residents in those videos as well. So this is just really great to really start to get a snapshot of what the sites are about, what they focus on, and see if any of that resonates with you. We do have 2 site showcases coming up in both November and December, where you can get to speak with these sites in a more direct fashion, kind of like this. And so I definitely encourage you to sign up for both of those at AANMC/events and get that started. And so you can go ahead and register if you want to take a screenshot of this QR code that can get you over to the site as well, if you haven't already done that. And so we are going to go ahead. I'll stop this screen here so that we can start to take some questions. So Let's see here. So I think any one of the residency directors, you can just raise your hand and start answering these. So question number one, what is the earliest an out of cycle residency application can open and be posted for a private clinic?
I'll take a stab at this. So the question is, how soon can you start an off cycle? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
The question, Dr. Garcia, is for off cycles, when are those posted? When can you start applying to them?
Oh, if you're eligible and you say you graduated or you're graduating this December, for example, or you have already recently graduated and you're looking at opportunities now, beginning now, and there might be some off-cycle opportunities already available, then you can begin to apply. The key thing to remember is, again, you need to have your application documents ready. You must have your CV, your personal statement, your 3 evaluations, your transcript. All of this must be all put together. And if you're eligible to apply, meaning that if the cycle says, oh, we would like to start the residency in January, that means you must have already passed the August boards to be able to even start that residency in January or February. And it really will vary from clinic to clinic because this is off cycle. It doesn't follow the main timelines that we mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So on average, how many residencies are available each year? I can take this one. So typically we post between 80 to 100 sites for the main cycle. And the number of applicants is typically about 30% of the graduating class. And depending on how many students are graduating that year, that number flexes a little bit. But that's typically where we are, is approximately 30% or so of the graduation eligible NDs apply. So this question might be good for one of you to answer. I'm not understanding how we are supposed to know who to precept or shadow during winter break if there isn't an official list until January. Who would like to take this?
Let me take this. You can already see all of the CNME approved programs. If you log into your account, you'll be able to find it under residency sites. It's located at the right upper hand corner of the portal. These are all the current CNME approved residency sites. Some of them probably have a resident or two already that might be in their second year, first year, second year, or third year. And some of them have just completed the training their resident, and they're now contemplating on whether they're going to be hiring a resident or participating in the upcoming cycle. So this is a good place to start. There are probably, I probably would say more than 100 of CNME approved residency sites in there. So that would be a good place to start. And then if there's a clinic there that might be of interest to you, you can connect with them and try to see if you might be able to arrange some kind of a shadowing or an observership opportunity.
I'm going to supplement that answer as well. Sometimes you're right, the official list isn't completed because we also have residencies that will come online in January and February. And so to make a decision as to which sites to start to observe during the winter break, my recommendation is to look at those sites and actually, when you contact them for information regarding which residents, regarding preceptorship or observership, ask them if they have any intention of continuing with the residency, and they'll be able to give you that answer. And so that's what I would recommend you do.
Okay, thank you. So here is a question that we probably should address as well. Can U.S. students apply to Canadian residency sites and vice versa?
Sorry, I'm just, hopefully my power won't come off. Just to let you know, yes, absolutely. US residents can apply to Canadian sites and Canadians can apply to US sites. However, there are challenges. Any kind of there may be delays in having you come on board, which is really discouraging for residencies that have a certain cycle that they start and have an end date. So they may, you know, think twice about having you as a resident. So I just want to give you the heads up that that may happen. And also the responsibility of acquiring a work visa and the like is the responsibility of the applicant and not the particular site. So if you are keenly interested in participating in a site, then that is, cross-border, then the recommendation is you start doing your work early and then express that interest to the site that you are proceeding with all efforts in order for you to start at the designated time. However, it's not necessarily guaranteed. So unfortunately, I think that's the best answer that I can provide. I don't know if anyone else can offer any other insights. What I will also say, though, is that we have accepted American folks on the Canadian side, and that there have been Canadians that have been accepted as residents over in the US.
And from personal experience, we are the ones who have accepted some of those Canadians, in fact, quite a few of them, but they have been very proactive with the process, as Dr. Carino alluded to. So immediately within the application process and the interviewing process, they have already acquired legal counsel to help facilitate what they need to do to secure a working visa. And these are again proactive measures that need to be taken and do reflect a sign of commitment, professionalism, and organization to the employer as well, which I think serves as a substantial benefit to the applicant.
Thank you so much. So there are a number of questions about the off cycle. I'll just touch on this really quickly. There is no timeline for off cycle. Off cycle sites are on a rolling basis. So they set their own deadlines, they set their requirements, the fees will be paid, the application will be processed as they are for the main cycle, but there is no established timeline for that. Basically, these are post-match to the next cycle, and that period in between is what we call off cycle. I hope that helps.
I would like to add that during these off-cycle posts, there is no match. So again, these postings are essentially like job interviews. If there is an application window, the site may choose to do first come, first serve in regard to the position is open until filled, or they might have an application window where they will accept all applications, interview all candidates who submitted within that window, and then offer the position to the candidate who that respective committee has chosen. So again, that falls on the respective site, how they facilitate that process.
Thank you. Would someone be able to explain the difference between preceptorship, observership? I know this is a little confusing because some of the schools call it different names.
Yeah, so preceptorship in general, what we're trying to summarize is again that opportunity as a student to shadow the site with whom you're considering residency. And there are multiple ways to do that. A lot of our sites do have opportunities for you as a student to go to outside sites or sites that are not necessarily part of the institutional clinic system. And that's going to vary from program to program in regards to how you qualify, how you secure those sites, and how you are assigned to those sites. Outside of your program of study, there is always an opportunity for you to go shadow a doctor with whom you are interested in. And that's not necessarily part of your program of study. So that, again, there's opportunities outside of that as well. Then there are opportunities to shadow physicians once you have graduated but don't hold a license. And that's going to vary from state to state. province to province in regard to what are the legalities behind that, because you are no longer a student with your school. As such, you're kind of on your own. So you want to make sure that any work you're doing with an organization as an individual, that you're satisfying all legal malpractice needs and so forth. So I can say, for example, in the state of Arizona, if you have graduated but don't hold a license and wish to observe or shadow or work with a site, you do have to apply for a formal preceptorship within the state of Arizona. But what we are trying to emphasize is, again, the opportunities that exist as a student, whether it's through the formal avenues that your program of study has to do elective offsites or preceptorships with affiliated clinics within your program of study, or for you to shadow independently as a student with doctors who are also going to be hosting residencies in the upcoming year.
Okay, I'm going to make this one the last question, and I think it's a good one. Are there any recommendations to what the students and / applicants should be asking about or looking for with these sites?
Maybe I'll start. One of the things that you can do is actually find out who the past residents were and ask them directly. They'll be able to give you some insight as to the operations of the site, what the expectations were of the resident, and it'll make things real. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I'll jump in next. I would ask what a sample schedule looks like and try to understand how much time you'd be seeing patients on your own, how much time you might be shadowing the site supervisor as a resident, how much time you might be working in other capacities in their lab, in their IV suite, and just a little bit more about the type of supervision that you'll receive. You know, many students are looking for a very specific thing, and I've seen some mismatches with what the sites have to offer. So some sites, we work autonomous a lot, and when you need support, you reach out and you ask questions. Other sites, there's a lot more structure. There's, every morning from 8 to 9, there's case review together. You'll shadow me for 4 hours this afternoon. You only get to see patients on your own, Wednesday through Friday, some of these pieces, and that might feel more comfortable to some, whereas others say, I'm licensed, I want to practice, let me go at it and do patient care for most of the week. So just getting an idea of that and then thinking about what it is that you want out of that year and making sure that you are applying and ranking sites, applying to when it comes to time, and then ranking sites that have a match in what you are looking for in terms of supervision and autonomous practice.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. I would echo that. I think that really having a clear understanding of what the site's expectation is for the student on day one, what they expect of you to do autonomously versus not autonomously. And really just, when we see that the issues with site mismatch, it's almost always a communication / expectations breakdown. And just making sure that you are very clear on their expectations. They are very clear on what you're expecting. There are no assumptions. Don't make assumptions. So get everything in writing that you can have, have that contract be very explicit with what is expected of you, what you expect in return. And just, have that real honest conversation, I think, with that. And again, also speaking to current residents is and can be very helpful. So with that, I recognize we're a few minutes over time. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us at residency@aanmc.org so that we can get you connected to the resources that will help you on your journey. And also, we can continue this conversation at the info sessions coming up later on in November and December as well. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time on a Sunday, and I look forward to hopefully seeing your names come across our desks as prospective residents. And with that, best of luck, and thank you to the Residency Committee and to Stephanie for assisting in today's event.